Oh, what is going on, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of Fly Tying Friday. I'm actually shooting this and editing it and posting it the same day, so it's Friday today. Um, I've been fishing a little more northern water that has a much larger population of stoneflies that inhabit the rivers. Unfortunately, near me, there's not a ton of stonefly rivers that have a really good population of stones in them. There will be some golden stones and stuff like that in like the Logan, but not a massive population. So I've been fishing this bug quite a bit lately just because I've been fishing so much farther north than I usually do. And it's been freaking crushing it. Pretty simple bug. I'm not going to say it has a name because every stonefly to me looks really similar. And it's just kind of your classic nymph bug. You got your rubber leg tail or whatever tail you have, a dubbed body with some ribbing, which I'm just going to tie with some copper wire. And then we have a thorax, legs, and a bead. And then I have a little hot spot that I put on it. Pretty quick bug. The techniques employed in it are pretty standard. Properly using or tying with rubber legs can be a pain in the butt. But it's just, I'll kind of show you guys my process to get through that. But it's not super complex, and it's been an absolutely deadly fly. This fly has a huge tungsten bead on it. It's 5.5 millimeters. So it's more of a Euro style bug just to really get down. And I use it on a Euro rig quite a bit when I'm fishing some of these rivers that have stones in them. And it's been an absolutely deadly pattern for me over the last little bit. So let's get started real quick, and I'll go kind of through the material list as I tie it, and we'll get it going. All right, so this is the bug right here specifically. It's a pretty cool looking bug. I feel like it looks a lot more complex than it actually is. Obviously, I'm a little biased because it's a pattern that I feel like I came up with mostly. But to me, this has been one of the coolest patterns that I've come up with, at least as far as I know. This could totally be somebody else's pattern that I've just stolen. But as far as I know, it's closer to mine than anything. This is in black. We're not going to tie it in black. We're going to be actually trying to focus and tie this fly in more of a golden stone coloration. So we have a 5.5 millimeter tungsten bead. You see right there. Pretty big. This hook is a clean camera hook. This is one of Kona's hooks. I have been super impressed with this brand. Their hooks are freaking crazy sharp. They stay sharp, really strong. Super impressed with this. I'm not usually a big, like you guys know, I'm not a huge like gear-driven person, right? So like having the best whatever is not really my forte. But the one place where I do not ever skimp is when it comes to hooks, because that is what's going to make or break that giant fish that you've hooked into and can ruin your whole day. So we're gonna get started on this. When I tie this in this kind of golden stone flavor, I like to use like an Arizona semi-seal. So we're going to get started with this fly. We're just going to be using a 280 denier black UTC thread. This thread I specifically use on some of these flies just to build bulk so I can have a good proportionate fly. So I'll get my thread base started. And I'll wrap this back. And depending on the style you're going for, it'll kind of change where exactly you put these legs. I like to have my stoneflies kind of look like they're, kind of curled up a little bit because they're really never fully stretched out. We're going to grab these rubber legs, the snake river fly legs. Again, I really like these. They're a nice thick leg so that they stand out a little more and they have a natural barring on them, which again just kind of adds that little bit of contrast that I think fish can get behind. And when I tie in my tail piece, I'll cut a pretty short little piece, probably about 1.5 inches, 2 inches long. And what I'll do is I'll make sure my thread's right where I want it. I'll tie one side in, just pointing exactly where I want it to go. Just on one side, right? I'll wrap back a tiny bit, and I'll make sure it's staying on the side so that it stays sprawled out. And then what I'll do is I'll take the same piece, fold it over, and pulling it tight, I'll tie it in. And as you can see, that creates a nice spread out legs in the back end of this fly. You want it to be pretty even, so I'm going to come back a little ways here. And if you want it to be a little more on the top, you can just pinch them and pull back just like that. And now those are pushed together and nice and spread out. So what I'll do is I'll just line them up and cut them to length, so they're about the same length. Sometimes you got to do a little bit more. That looks good to me. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'm going to wrap up a tiny bit up this fly, try and build a decent little taper that's going to come off of that back of that. The thorax doesn't really matter because we're going to add a bunch of dub here in a minute, but we just want that taper to look pretty nice and natural. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a thick, this is a medium copper wire that I use on these. When you tie these bigger stoneflies, you kind of want this to stand out pretty well. So using a thicker wire will help create more of a contrast in that, whereas like if you're tying a smaller fly, if you were to use a medium on that, it would create a giant taper that you really don't want. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll take my copper wire. Again, this is a medium. You can tell I've had this thing for a long time. I'm going to tie this in up towards the front. And the reason I'm tying it up towards the front is so that I can create, again, a nice even taper down the back of the fly. And I'll tie this all the way down to the rubber legs. And then I'll go back up, just making sure I have a nice taper again. And this is just going to make my dubbing of this body just that much easier when I create a decent taper on it. So I'll come back here, and I'm liking where I'm at right now. You kind of want to put a couple wraps up, otherwise your thread will slide down. And we're going to use our our Arizona Semi-Seal in Canadian Olive. I'm not sure why they call this an olive. It is a very light dub. I wouldn't really call it. I mean, I guess it's pretty olive, I guess. But so all we're going to do is we're going to do a dubbing noodle up the body of this. Again, we're going to do nice, tightly wound noodle here because we don't want to have this bulky, because then it'll start like pushing off and becoming a little bit raggedy and haggard, and we can control have a perfect taper on our fly even if we do this with a really thin dub, because we can just wrap on top of it. So I'm going to start with just about that much dubbing. I'm going to wrap back to where my wire is, and the nice thing about the wire is a lot of times you can use it to kind of guide your first couple wraps of dubbing so that you don't trap those legs at all. And we're just going to wrap this nice and tight and uniform up the body. And we're only going to really need to go about, 2/3 up the, or not even 2/3. What's a smaller fraction than 2/3? I don't know. Some smaller fraction than 2/3 up the body with the dubbing. And so I'm going to add a little bit more. Again, we're still just going like a nice tight noodle up this body. Just like that. We're going to keep wrapping, making sure we still have a nice taper. And that's probably far enough. I'm going to add a little bit more just for safety. That's perfect right there. So yeah, we'll go about 2/3 up the fly. I think that's a pretty fair fraction there. Okay, cool. So there's our body. And we're going to take this copper wire, pull it tight, and I like to counter wrap mine. I know I really never used to do this, but I've learned that it really does help with the durability of your flies. So I'm just going to counter wrap this up nice and uniform up the body. Don't be afraid to unwrap it a little bit just to make sure that you are happy with the aesthetic of the fly. Do the fish really care? Probably not. Do I care? Definitely. Okay. So I'm going to finish this off like this, add a couple wraps, and now I can just helicopter this right off. Perfect. Okay. And so next step, we're going to take our thin skin, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be pulling it forward, folding it back, pulling it forward, folding it back. So we're going to need a little bit more of this than you would typically probably anticipate. So I'm just going to cut this lengthwise this way, because this most of the time ends up being just about the perfect amount. So we got about a 2-inch strip of thin skin, and it's can be kind of a pain in the butt to get it to separate from the paper, but this is where having long nails can help. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take this thin skin. As you can see, it's a little bit translucent, so it'll show through. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to push it and wrap it around the hook almost to make sure that I don't have any weird edges, and this will actually help kind of seat that right where I want it to be. Okay, perfect. Just like that. So you see we still got our body, and then this stuff's going to be essentially folded back and create a nice little wing case. So now I can start with my rubber legs. And what I'll do with these is I'll tie one single leg going out the back. So it'll be one piece, and then I'll fold it back. So you'll have one strip hidden, one strip. And then I'll wrap up a little bit, and then I'll add a piece to each side, tied in the middle so that it sprawls out. So you'll essentially have 3 legs on each side. Is that anatomically correct? I don't know. Do I care? Not really. But I'm going to take this, and you can cut these kind of long because you're kind of going to want to be able to have, a lot of say in the length of these. But if they're too short, you're going to kind of lose that luxury. So before I do this, usually you'd add dub. I don't add dub to these these rear wraps, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it in, and then I'm going to dub over the top of it, which will force it back, because you'll see when I fold this thin skin up, it's going to want to pull those legs back a little bit. But I'll just do this just like here. Perfect. And I'll take some more of my Arizona semi-seal, and I'll just use the same dub up the entire body. I'll get a little bit of this. And this is kind of to construct this to make it look pretty realistic. It's a little bit of a process, but it's nothing too technical. It's just a matter of taking on the challenge, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to do this, and as you can see, we'll build a nice, tight little thorax right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this thin skin, pull it forward, and I'm going to push it back and force it down, just like that. And then I'm going to pinch it with both my fingers, and now we have a nice little start to a wing case right there. You can kind of see it. So I'm going to wrap that forward, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull some wraps back, and I'm going to keep that wrapped forward just like this. Okay, perfect. So we're going to wrap like that, and then what I'm going to be able to do now is I'm going to tie on here, and then I'm going to be able to fold this back again and create that nice wing case profile. Okay, so I'm going to wrap that a little bit more forward. Make sure that we're not sliding too much with it having too much of a downslope on this. If you want to trim these legs right away, you can. It's going to be a process to get them to the right length, and I want it to be proportionate to the rest of the legs. So I usually will do that last. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to, again, create a nice tight dubbing noodle. So I have ultimate control over this. And I'm going to dub this little section right here where I'm going to put these legs first. And not going to go super crazy on the dub quite yet, because we're going to add legs to both parts of this now. And it's going to get wrapped over quite a bit. And we'll just add some dub at the end of this to create that profile. So I'll have these legs, and I'll tie them right into the middle. And I'm going to do the offside real quick. And I'll pull tight. And what that'll do is that'll spray those legs out. And we kind of want them towards the top of the fly. Just my personal aesthetic preference. So there's that right there. And we'll go to the other side, and you guys are going to see, again, how I do this. A little more on your side. Okay, so I just wrapped it right down the middle. And when I pull tight, it's going to sprawl those legs out. And you're going to want to get these into a decent position. You still really have a lot of control over what goes on with these legs after this. But you just want to make sure that you're getting close, right? So now what I'm going to do is when I add this dub, it'll actually make these legs even more controllable, because there'll be some loose parts that we can kind of pull and tug the legs into a good position. So what I'll usually do is I'll add a little bit of dubbing wrap behind, in between, and then in front of the leg. So what I'll do is I'm going to go behind this leg right here and this leg. And this way I can kind of control my taper well while also controlling legs. So that wrap really pushed that leg out, you can see. But now when I put this wrap here, it's going to give me a nice even spread on these legs, right? So I'm going to just add a couple more, and then I'll add one in front right here. Okay, so now I'm going to take this thin skin, I'm going to push it back, and my thread is advanced in front of these legs now. So I'm going to push this back, being careful not to force the legs too far back, but I'll pinch them, and I'll tie this off, and that's just barely right behind. I need to get these even. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So you got that right there. And as you cinch down with this, it can have a tendency to slide underneath the bead and force this up a little bit. I think that's totally fine. It honestly kind of makes it look even more realistic to me. And I'll cut that. So now we have our wing case, and this fly is essentially almost done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more dubbing, but instead of using my Arizona Semi-Seal, I'm going to use this orange, I don't even know what kind of dub this is. It's just like a sparkly Antron dubbing. I'll have it linked below so you guys can specifically see it. And I'm going to just create a hotspot like I would on a Euro Nymph now. And when I do this, it's going to give me, again, a little more control over where these legs are going. It's going to force them back a tiny bit just because that's just where those legs, where this dub's going to push. But that being said, I still will be able to control them and pull them in the direction that I want. Okay, there's a good amount there. I'm going to add a little bit more because I do really want this hot spot to stand out. Perfect. And I'll wrap these up real quick one more time. And I like that. It's not too invasive. And you're going to kind of have to kind of move the thin skin around a little bit just to make sure you're still in the right spot. And then we're going to whip finish this. Just like that. And then, as you guys know, I love super glue. I love flies that last, and I hate flies that don't. If I'm going to take the time to tie a fly, you bet yourself that I am not going to let it fall apart. Okay, cool. So I had a nice dab of glue there. And now we have to handle these legs. So the rear legs right there, as you can see, are pretty long. So I'm going to pinch these in the same spot, and I'm going to go and cut them in the same spot. Sometimes, again, it won't line up super perfectly, but as you can see now, those are a nice length for the rest of the body. These legs are clearly far too long, so again, I'm going to pinch these, and I'm going to cut them. I like that length. It looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to get the same length on this side now. And I think having a little bit long legs on your stonefly patterns is a good thing. These are all still kind of suggestive patterns is what I'm trying to say. So a lot of that imitation that comes from these flies comes from the legs that these fish are seeing and going, oh, that's a big bug with long legs. I'm eating that, which will have the antenna sticking out of the top and the one sticking out of the back. But that right there is the finished product. Again, pretty quick to tie. It looks super realistic, and it's just a good bug. And that's it. That's all there is to it. And that's what I've been fishing more often than not on any of these rivers that do have stoneflies. It's just such a big meal for fish that they really, really enjoy it. But this is it in like a golden stone. You can tie it in a black like this. I like to use the same color legs for the black one. And, you know, we also have it in like a brown as well. So like, you can see that's a little more brown. Just kind of like a classic stonefly. Like a brown stone, but there are black stones and olive stones even, but that's a simple way to do it too. You can change your leg color. You can kind of play with it. So give it a try. Let me know if you do tie it. I'd love to see these pictures. I don't know if all you guys follow me on Instagram. Go check out the Instagram. It's just called the Fly Dudes. But I love seeing pictures, and I've had a couple people send me pictures of the patterns that I've tied that they've either mixed up and fished, or they'll fish them and they'll catch fish. But I'm all about, you know, being a part of this community, and I really enjoy it when people message me and talk to me about it. And just trust me, if you send me a message, I'm going to respond to it. I'm not the kind of guy that is just going to not respond to that stuff. So give it a try. Yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Later.